And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointed episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers fell without much of a whimper to the Duke Blue Devils in Durham at Cameron Indoor Arena. Just not a good performance by Indiana. Duke jumped out on the Hoosiers early in the game. Indiana allowed themselves to get sped up. Obviously, Duke's defensive pressure had a lot to do with that, but the Hoosiers just consistent stream of turnovers and poor decisions and lackadaisical box outs, and pretty much everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And this was a game that pretty much felt like it was over after about 5 or 6 minutes. Look, there's just not a whole lot to say about it. It was a disappointing effort all around from Indiana. Duke is obviously very, very talented, but I think all IU fans, while maybe not expecting a victory in this game, expected Indiana to compete better than they did, and that's why I think so many IU fans are disappointed in what we saw tonight. And we're going to break it all down for you. I'm your host, Jerod Morris, here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms here on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And let's start tonight's show as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. Very hard to find positives in this game, although Ryan does think that he has a positive, which we'll get to in his opening statement. And there were, a few micro positives here and there. But, the only thing that I could really come up with for the banner moment is that at the under 16-minute timeout in the second half, I decided to go take a look back at the 2015 game against Duke, the last time we played here, when they blew our doors off that game too. That game, the final score was 94-74. Duke scored 1.52 points per possession that game. Really, it felt like that season was falling apart. And I was reminded that in the aftermath of that awful effort, Indiana won 12 straight games. In fact, they won 14 out of 15, and the one loss was an overtime loss at the Kohl Center. And that team ended up winning the Big Ten. And so, look, there obviously aren't straight parallels. That team had an all-time great point guard in Yogi Ferrell that it could lean on, and guys like OG Anunoby who stepped up in the second half of the season. And there's a lot for this team to prove to say that they can do that. But all I know is I am taking at least some solace on this night, this very disappointing night, that the last time this happened to us, it became kind of a galvanizing force that the team was able to rally from, and they went on a winning streak. And boy, they better rally with it, because I think after that game, Indiana played like Morehead State or somebody and kind of had a few games against poor competition to get their legs back under them. They don't have that luxury now with games against Northwestern and Penn State and Louisville and Butler coming up. So whatever lessons need to be taken from this need to be taken fast, because the Hoosiers have the rest of this 5-game gauntlet coming up, and they need to win some of these games. And they're going to have to play a whole lot better than they did tonight to be able to do that. All right, tonight's Hoosier Proud banner moment, as always, brought to you by Hoosier Proud and Home Field. At homefieldapparel.com, you will find the comfiest and most unique licensed IU apparel. And at HoosierProud.com, you will find State of Indiana-themed apparel, as well as our official Assembly Call logo shirts. And both brands, Hoosier Proud and Home Field Apparel, were started by an IU grad, and all apparel at both sites is designed and printed out of Indianapolis. And with Christmas on the way, you should definitely consider finding the perfect holiday gift for the IU fan or Indiana resident in your life at homefieldapparel.com or HoosierProud.com. Plus, Indiana's birthday is coming up, so start picking out your favorite Indiana tees and get ready for Hoosier Proud's Indiana birthday sale on December 11th.
Can a brother get some coupons?
Yes. Don't forget to use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout today for 15% off your order on either site. That's promo code ASSEMBLY at HoosierProud.com and HomeFieldApparel.com. All righty, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And we will start with Andy Bottoms, your Bottoms line on this Indiana defeat.
Well, I think it's hard to categorize this as anything other than disappointing, not because IU lost, which I think was an expected outcome for the vast majority of IU fans, but the way in which they played really when the game mattered, and when Duke was interested in the game. As Ryan mentioned, he was about as interested in the second half as Duke appeared to be defensively. And I think that's a pretty apt way to put it. So even the fact that IU outscored him in the second half doesn't really mean a great deal when you put it into that context. But, the first half, 13 turnovers, 4 assists, and so many of the turnovers were careless. I mean, Duke was pressing, but not really, to me, more just it wasn't the pressure that forced the turnovers. It was just carelessness by and large. And I think that's what's disappointing, because when you put that into the context of the prior couple games, those were the themes that were there, and those were the things that worried you. And against a team that really wasn't that, didn't come in that good defensively, to really come out and play that way in a tough environment. They played themselves out of the game so quickly, got way behind early, played fairly even kind of in the middle portions of the first half, and then just got blitzed before halftime. I think a 13-point lead at the under 4 timeout turned into a 24-point deficit at halftime. And, just pretty much everything that could go wrong did. Juwan got in early foul trouble. Romeo shot the ball really poorly. IU couldn't finish around the basket. Couldn't secure rebounds even when they did force a miss. It was, pretty much a collective disaster in the first half. And so whatever you think of the second half, and there are probably some positives to take away from that, despite, Duke's kind of lack of interest in the game at that point. It just, when the game really mattered, when it was in the balance, this team didn't respond in a tough environment. And, things don't get any easier with the stretch they have coming up, and they've got to get some things figured out with the turnovers and transition defense, which has been something else that Archie's harped on. That was pretty poor in the first half as well. So not a lot of positives to really take away from my perspective tonight, other than that the game finally came to a merciful conclusion and the 2-hour-long promo for Duke's basketball program has now come to an end. But
Good.
Watch more on ESPN Plus, where you can see Coach K say "yo" a bunch of times.
Oh boy. All right, let's go over to Ryan for his rant. Ryan, this is the last time that we allow the team to listen to your preview before the game. I think you psyched him out.
I mean, Jerod, you were there on Banner Monday. Was I right in everything that I said about Duke? And was I right about everything that happened and what Indiana struggled with? I think the number one thing they struggled with was the length of those guys, the quickness, the athleticism, it's just things that Indiana can't match on a physical level. But Indiana shouldn't feel bad about that, because there's 90% of the teams out there, 95% of the teams can't match what Duke can do from a physicality standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint, especially at this time of year when you're not really all there as a team yet, and they can just out athlete you, essentially. The guys come in waves for Duke. And I think that the one positive you can take away, and I said before we went on the air, I said, guys, I have a positive. I know I'm usually the guy who comes on here and rants and gets angry or throws things, but I have a positive, and it's that Indiana is not going to face a better team than that the rest of the year. That's the best they're going to see all year. Maybe not from a team standpoint, but from a matchup standpoint, that's a horrible matchup for IU. That is as talented a team as there is in the country. That's as talented a team as there's been in the country since Kentucky was almost undefeated a few years ago. And before that, you got to go a long way back to find a more talented team. That is 3 of the 4 top draft picks in the 2019 NBA draft were on that floor tonight, as far as it looks right now. Indiana's not going to face that the rest of the year. So the rest of the year, it's about Indiana's execution. It's not about just getting outmanned by a team. And the sad part is that the execution wasn't there tonight. In a night where, hey, you want to hang in this game for a while, you got to execute. Well, they turned the ball over 20 times. I think it was 13 in the first half. Justin Smith had 5 on his own in the first half. I mean, Justin Smith's a very talented player, and I thought that, you know what, he went toe-to-toe with Zion Williams. I mean, Zion beat him, but he at least was willing to engage and go toe-to-toe with him on for about the first 10 minutes of the game, and they started turning the ball over, and he wilted. And you can't do that. You just can't. When you're going up against a guy like that, you got to punch him back when he punches you. And I realized that not everything went well. They didn't shoot it well. They hit 14 of 25 free throws, which is becoming an ongoing problem. They missed a ton of easy layups early on. They, as Andy said, they played themselves out of the game. Duke is good enough. You don't need to help them. And Duke would have won this game, I think, if Indiana played the way that Duke played. If Indiana played really well, they probably still lose a close one. But to just get run out of the building in the first half like that was embarrassing. And hopefully these guys are embarrassed by it. And in being embarrassed by it, they realize what they have to work on, because you can't just turn the ball over like that. 2/3 of those turnovers were unforced errors, where they were just throwing it into space and nobody was there, or they're dribbling it out of bounds. I mean, Evan Fitzner, you know what, Evan, just shoot the ball. Don't try and dribble through a press, please, ever again, because that was just silly. And he dribbles it right out of bounds. And that's a grad transfer doing that. You can't lose your head in a situation like that. What's going to happen when they go play, somewhere tough on the road? I know they don't go to the Kohl Center this year, but like Michigan State on the road? I mean, You've got to be composed. And they lost their composure and they played themselves out of the game before it even had a chance to get going. And that was really the disheartening part. So what I'll say is they're not going to face a more talented team this year. That is an absolute fact. On their schedule, there is not a more talented team than Duke. The key is going to be execution now. They've got to execute if they're going to win games. This team isn't Duke, where they cannot execute for 2/3 of a game and then make a crazy comeback like Duke did against Gonzaga and almost win that thing. This is a team that needs to execute to win. And quite frankly, we saw some really bad stuff tonight that needs to get cleaned up. And as Andy said, needs to get cleaned up in a hurry.
Yeah, it does. You know, we can talk about some of the individuals coming up, but I guess, just on a macro level, I think, Ryan, it's a good point. There's only so much you can take away from a game like this projecting forward, because Indiana won't face an opponent like this.
Well,
hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on. So we're not going to overreact just to that. But I do think it's fair. A lot of the reactions that I'm seeing from folks that are disappointed are because what we saw tonight in the first half was basically all the bad stuff and the bad habits that we've seen since Arkansas, just on steroids, because you're against a team that's going to make you pay for every single one. And so I think that's where the concern comes, is it's the turnovers, the lackadaisical decision-making, the lackadaisical plays, and kind of a team that doesn't seem to have great chemistry, doesn't seem to have great togetherness, a great, I don't know. I mean, we saw, Juwan Morgan kind of be the rudder against UT Arlington and UC Davis, but, he obviously wasn't able to do that tonight. And so I guess what I'm saying here is, how concerned should we be? We don't want to take too much from this because we won't play a team like Duke, but how concerned should we be for these 4 games coming up that right now this is a team that just they look like a team kind of in disarray, that was talented enough to take advantage of it in these last 2 home games, but now those things that you could kind of wave away as okay, this is one game. Now it's been 4 straight games, and this team is kind of revealing who it is, and none of us are happy about it, but, I don't really know what to say about it. It feels real right now.
A couple things. One, if this game happened in March, I'd have a much different attitude about losing to Duke like this. I mean, right now, things are in flux for both teams. There's some differences between them and who they're going to be at the end of the season and all that. One thing I will say about this, though, is Indiana was supposed to have some veteran guys who have missed a few weeks. That's a huge factor when you have such a young team. Rob Phinisee is not supposed to be your primary ball handler for 30 minutes a game. That's just Demezy Anderson is not supposed to be out there. I know he wasn't as much tonight, but in the last few games, out there 20 minutes a game. Deron Davis was supposed to be eased back in, not playing 25 minutes against Arkansas. I mean, those things were not supposed to happen this early and have been thrust upon this team because of injuries, because of whatever else. The problem with where they're at right now, health-wise, and look, it was great to get Zach McRoberts and Devontae Green back. I know neither one of them played amazingly well, but we'll just write
to be
that
expected.
Off.
I mean,
yeah, we'll just write that off as a little
for those
bit of
guys
and Duke in Cameron. So what I'll say is, the problem is if you have a guy like Justin Smith who's struggling offensively and turning the ball over 5 times in the first half, you would like to be able to go to a guy like Race Thompson and throw him in there, a guy who can go inside out and do some different things. He's out with a concussion. Race is a guy you would have liked to get in the first few games of this season, get him acclimated, get him some playing time, and have him ready to go for Big Ten season. Now we don't know when he's going to come back, how he's going to fit in, how they're going to work him in. I mean, this team there's a lot of problems there. Evan Fitzner hasn't played the way he played in the first couple games. Where is his, what's his role going to be moving forward? Especially if a guy like Race does come back, does he take some of his minutes? Does Race make, more move more to the outside a little bit? We don't know a lot about this team, and a lot of that has to do with the health of the team, and the health of the team has been very bad. They're just not healthy, and they need to get healthy. And I don't know where on the schedule you get healthy, because it gets really tough right now. And honestly, if it's at a point where you're not super healthy, play your guys for the Big Ten games and then sit them for the others. I don't care. Get this team healthy, because if it's not healthy and the guys don't figure out their roles early enough, we could be talking about problems with a disjointed roster in mid-January as opposed to late November.
Andy?
Yeah, I do think the injuries have played a part in it. You just saw guys not trusting where other players were supposed to be on the floor. I mean, that's how you end a half with 4 assists. I mean, there was very little that was happening within the flow of offensive sets or any kind of cohesive offensive attack. Part of that was they got sped up and made poor decisions, but part of it was when things really boiled down, nobody really trusted each other to be in the right spot, or when they did, they threw the ball away. I mean, there was one where, if Fitzner keeps rolling to the basket, Justin Smith assumes he's going to be there. Justin Smith gets credit, or that turnover goes against him, but Fitzner basically like stopped on a cut right to the rim when nobody's in the middle of the lane, and then they just kind of stare at each other after the play, wondering why they didn't do what the other one thought they were going to do. So I think that's part of it. How much of it we don't know. This is not the game, the environment, the anything really, to try to figure out how you reacclimate pieces and try to figure out what your rotations are really going to be. We know based on who was available at the start of the season, McRoberts would be a starter. He clearly wasn't able to play those minutes tonight. What we don't know is, if game one, if Devontae Green's ready to go, is he a starter? We don't really know that. So, and then add to that, Juwan going out with foul trouble in the first half, and, things are careening off a cliff within the first 4 minutes of the game. When you can't lose him. Now, Archie did, to his credit, bring him back in at various points to try to kind of steal minutes with him periodically over the course of the half. But, I think things just got off the rails so quickly that it becomes a little bit difficult. I think it is concerning because the mistakes are the same. And they're not at a point in the schedule right now that is going to be conducive to, like, you can't work through stuff on the court in Big Ten games, in games against major conference teams, but that's kind of the situation that they're in, whether they want to be or not. So they've got to figure out how to do that. It certainly wasn't the optimal scenario for that tonight. So we may finally get to figure out what the rotation for this team is going to be, but even then you don't have Race Thompson back, but you can at least start to see that come together, and maybe guys get a little more comfortable playing together. But I there's definitely some of that. I don't know if that's lack of chemistry or just lack of time being with one another, but it's kind of the hand they're dealt at this point. You got to,
Well, the chemistry develops with time. I mean, that's just the way it works, is the more time you're on the floor. We saw it with defensive switches too. I mean, early on against Marquette, you were seeing guys switch pretty much on every screen. Tonight, it was kind of disjointed because a couple guys who were on the floor hadn't been in there much. So you just saw a disjointed team.
There just wasn't a lot of communication, especially early either.
Yeah. And that was obvious.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe it's, tonight felt hopeless, and the rest of the season isn't hopeless by any means, but it is concerning. That's this game and the past three have really highlighted some things that this team is going to have to fix, or, well, I don't really want to consider that alternative right now.
They'll fix it. I'm confident they'll fix it.
Coming up, we continue our breakdown of Indiana's loss to Duke. I'll point out tonight's meaningful moment you might have missed, and then we'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from that game. I hope that segment is short. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 90-69 loss to Duke tonight in Durham. It is time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. It's difficult to pick out moments from this game because Indiana got its doors blown off so early. But I did think that there were, and how many turnovers was in the first half? 13. I thought there were a couple turnovers in particular that really just killed any chance for Indiana to build any momentum. One came when it was 26-13. There were about 9 minutes to go, and Romeo he had a great block shot. And they showed this highlight 2 or 3 times. Al Durham's leading transition. It was 3-on-1, maybe 4-on-1. And for the life of me, I don't know what Al was thinking. He could have just taken it to the basket and scored, but he throws it out of bounds. Indiana doesn't score. It was just yet another example of Indiana kind of playing tentative and just, not being prepared for the moment. And that seemed like such a simple basketball play to make, but by that point they were so out of sorts that they were making plays like this. And it would have cut it to 11, and really it would have built a little bit of momentum for Indiana. Instead, of course, Duke goes down the other way and scores, and that little bit of momentum is gone. something similar happened at about the 4-minute mark where it's 36-24. Again, you've built just a little bit of momentum. You've kind of stemmed the tide. And Robert Phinisee had a terrible turnover. And we'll talk about his play because that was one of the more disappointing elements of this game. And this was just one of those like brain dead Crean era passes where, you're out on the perimeter and you just throw it right to the guy. Zion steals it, windmill dunk. It's 38-24. And Duke would proceed then to go on a huge run to end the first half that absolutely killed any chance Indiana had of doing anything in the second half. So, Andy, meaningful moments. You could probably pick out all 13 of those turnovers in the first half because they're absolutely what killed, any chance Indiana had. But I thought in particular, because of the timing and just how egregious and unforced the turnovers were, those two really stuck out to me.
Yeah, the one with Al, I think, was emblematic of you saw a team that pretty quickly lost its will, desire, whatever you want to say, to really go inside and attack the basket. They missed a lot of shots in the lane early on, and then I think got spooked a little bit between that and some of the some of the block shots and things like that. And then instead of trying to make simple plays and take shots that really were there moving toward the rim, that they kind of overpassed and passed out at times. That was just not, they had better shots. They passed up good shots to get a worse shot. And so I think that one was bad. The Phinisee one, I know what you're talking about, but it was another case where, the turnovers just came in bunches. You had 4 in the first 3.5 minutes of the game. And then you had, 4 more in the next 2.5 minutes of the game. And then you had, 3 within a minute and a half late in the second half. And it was no different to start the second half. Very first possession, you have a turnover. They turned it over 5 times in the first, 4 minutes and 11 seconds of the second half. And the reality is they had 19 of the 20 turnovers within 27 minutes of game time. So if they only had 1 turnover the last 13 minutes, again, you can credit that a little bit to, kind of, the way that the Duke started to defend and things like that at that point. But it was just, same thing that I feel like we used to say so often, that they just snowballed and it was just one after the other after the other. And it was a team that got sped up and all of a sudden nobody really had the confidence to make plays, except on the occasion when some guys would have too much confidence. The Justin Smith makes a good play and then takes a rebound off the rim and tries to dribble the length of the court, thinking that nobody's going to step in front of him at some point. So you had some of the turnovers where I think guys were like scared to go up and really make a contested shot at the rim. And then others where there's really no chance you're going to be able to make the play that you're trying to make. And there was really no rudder steadying things in between to be able to kind of balance those between, being aggressive, but still being smart.
Ryan, the other moment that stood out to me, and you might laugh at this and you might say that this is nothing, but it was in between the first media timeout and the second media timeout in the first half. And they had a shot of Archie on the bench. And it kind of lingered on him for a little while, 3-4 seconds, and he just looked like a deer in headlights. Like, oh my God, what the hell is this? What are we supposed to do? And look, we all kind of felt that way. But, and again, maybe it's nothing. But as we often say, teams kind of take on the personality of their head coach. And look, we've been very, I think, positive about Archie. And you even said earlier, you think he's going to get this figured out. And I'm not saying that I don't have confidence in him anymore. But this did look like a team early in the game that wasn't prepared for the moment, almost like they didn't know what was coming. And maybe that's because you can't prepare for that kind of length and athleticism. But I was disappointed, and I thought that shot was kind of emblematic of it, symbolic of a team that felt really unprepared and a coach that even in that moment, as it was all unraveling, was kind of like, what the heck is going on here? So maybe I'm reading way too much into 3 or 4 seconds on the camera, but that moment certainly kind of captured, I think, how everybody felt. And I would have liked to, I guess, just seen something a little bit more confidence-inducing over there on the sidelines while that was going on.
I think you're reading too much into it. I mean,
All right,
love you,
fine.
buddy, but I think you're reading too much into it. He was probably, he could have been listening for something, and that could have been the dead, look on his face. He was listening, or who knows? We don't know. We're not down there. But I would say he didn't have any answers tonight, and that's fair enough to say.
That's what. Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
I don't think it was because of a look in the camera. I think it was because of who he was playing. And
no, it's what the look symbolized. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, go digging, Morris. It's in the backyard.
I have a mad crush on Archie Miller, and
Coach isn't buying it.
No, look. It was what it was tonight. Sometimes you are just walking into a bear's mouth. That's just the way it is with the schedule when you get this set up. I mean, you're just blindly walking and you're going to get mauled. That's just what it is. And quite frankly, if Duke pulls off their comeback against Gonzaga and Maui, maybe this isn't as bad tonight, but they came out focused and ready to go. And Zion Williamson was looking to kill somebody. I mean, that's just that's what it was, because he stumbled a little in Maui and people were talking about it. These guys read, the NBA draft boards and everything. And, it is what it is. When they announced Cameron on the schedule, Duke at Cameron, for a team that's going to be really young, we all knew they were going to lose this game. Now,
lose, but not get their doors blown. Like I get,
you're an old woman, Morris. Would you?
No, I'm not. No, because I'm not. No, because I'm not buying what you're. I'm not buying this right now.
You don't even know what I was going to say.
No, I'm responding to what you just said. Yeah, and I'm not buying it, because yes, this was tough. It's walking into a bear's mouth, or whatever weird metaphor that you used right there. But what I'm saying is, but what I'm saying is,
if you're walking around in the dark in a forest, what's gonna happen?
But what I'm saying is, but here's the thing. The biggest disappointment was the lack of kind of like
I was
fight.
Getting there.
And we're not going to take this. And that's what I'm saying is we didn't see that from the leadership on down tonight. That's the disappointment.
I was getting there. I was going to say losing isn't the problem. It's the way they lost. That's what I was going to say. And that's what's disheartening. And when, as I said, as I was going to say before I was so rudely interrupted, circled this on the calendar, we knew probably, okay, you're going to go down to Durham playing a Duke team with 3 of the 4 top recruits in the country, and you're going to lose. But it's about how you play, and it's about how you – now the loss is in the rearview mirror. It's not about the loss anymore. It's about what you do next. How do you play on Saturday? How do you come back from this? Does this team just completely refocus and lock in and say, all right, we're not going to do that ever again because we don't like the way it feels? Or do they mope? Do they have issues? Do they still turn the ball over 20 times a game? It's really – the loss is over. The Duke game's over, and it doesn't matter because – it's not something to dwell on, quite frankly. We all know we lost. We all know they play bad. I'm sure we'll talk about statistics and stuff in a minute, but it's not really about that now. It's about, okay, what happens next? And the look on Archie's face, I don't care what it was during the game. I care what it is tomorrow when he gets their butts into practice and they watch film on this. I think that it's just going to be about how they respond. And if a team comes out looking lackadaisical and awful on Saturday, okay, then there's reason for concern.
We keep pushing the concern off, though, is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to overreact, but
don't judge them till early January. But you won't listen to me. But no.
By the way, in the chat, everybody's appreciating your optimism.
Well, I'm not even being like
role reversal.
I'm just where I was 3 weeks ago. I understand this team's had injuries. They've been playing. What I saw the last week and a half when I finally caught up on those games because I couldn't watch them live. What I saw was a tired team. That's what I saw after the Arkansas game. Those next 2 games, that was a tired team. It was guys playing way more minutes than they were supposed to. It was guys in roles they aren't supposed to be in, and they wore down. And that happens when you have guys injured. And as Andy said, I don't know if it's chemistry or what, but a lot of these guys aren't used to being on the floor together because they haven't gotten a chance to be. You're supposed to get your injuries out of the way in the preseason. This team has had to do them in the non-conference. That's not a recipe for looking your best when you go play in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. This team, I'm still not going to judge them harshly until January. If they're blowing games like this in January, okay, you're going to hear some anger from me. But for me right now, it's about building now. And I want them to start after this because we all knew this was going to look bad. Well, I did at least. You were kind of, optimistic. For me, it's about how they build from this and how they build over the next couple of weeks and looking better each game and cleaning things up every game. This to me, and I told Kent Sterling today, this is almost like a 1-game season, or it's an anomaly because it means absolutely nothing unless you beat Duke on their home floor. It means absolutely nothing to you. It's not a bad loss. It's not going to hurt you, and it's not. It's almost like it doesn't matter on the schedule. So to me, put it out there, build on everything else you had, and move forward. Now, there's some concerning things. I'm not saying there aren't. But you've got to move forward, and it's about what they do on Saturday, not what they did in Durham tonight.
So, so the only part that I'll jump in with two things. One, so Alex Bose tweeted this out on Postgame Radio. Archie Miller says lack of organization for IU tonight is on him and the coaching staff, which is interesting, like to use the word organization, but be that as it may. I guess what I would say is, while I don't believe anyone expected IU to win this game, if you just showed the score to me and said IU lost by 21 and I didn't watch the game, I could kind of shrug my shoulders at that and make it pretty easy to say, tough environment,
15, which was insane.
Didn't play well, didn't whatever. I think the concerning part, if you want to be concerned, is the way that they played to lose the way that they did. They could have had Duke played the way they played in the first half and IU played the way it did in the first half, which really wasn't that much different. IU could have lost by 50.
Yes,
Duke left a ton of points at the rim, and that is the IU could have had 30 turnovers. That's the problem. Now, what happens from here, we don't really know, but I think that's where I think concern is legitimate in that sense, not that they lost, but how they lost and how they looked doing it. And so, in 2 weeks when they've had a few of these other tough games, and maybe it's a different conversation, but I think it's reasonable to have your guard up at this point for the way that they've played. I will say another memorable moment to bring this back to a positive was the fact that Zach McRoberts seemed willing to take a charge on Zion Williamson at one point in the first half, which I applaud that young man for that kind of courage, because he might actually walk right into a bear's mouth then, based on
guys.
He was willing to do it. Other guys were. Fitzner actively
moved out of the way.
His way.
Because he's a sane human being.
As a person who values
San Diego guy.
Life. But so we do have that. So Zach has proven to us his toughness. But
I have to tell you guys, being on standing next to Zion Williamson, you think he looks big on TV. You have no idea. He is enormous. And there was during the first game of the Maui Invitational for Duke was against San Diego State. And there was a San Diego State fan sitting right behind me. I was on press row, guy maybe 2 rows up. Zion leads the break one time and some dude screams out, "Take a charge." And everyone on press row just started laughing. No, don't take it. We want you to live. It was, I'd rather jump in front of a train than Zion Williamson with a full head of steam.
All right, well, look, we're 14 minutes into this segment. We haven't even gotten to inside the numbers. The lack of organization here, clearly on me. I take full responsibility for that.
You're the host.
It's your fault for engaging Ryan in that argument.
And not just agreeing with me and moving on.
No, well, you know what? It's not. That needed to be pushed back against. And I will say, most of the people in the chat mob are agreeing with and appreciating Ryan's take. And given a little bit of time to sit back and allow this game to wash over me, I acknowledge that some of what you're saying probably holds some truth to it. But I think it is perfectly fine to have some legitimate concern about what we saw here, and not just about the execution, but also just what the guys looked like. I don't know. I'm sick of, just going into Duke and just expecting it to go poorly. We're Indiana, at some point we need to go in here and expect to see a professional effort for 40 minutes. And I realize the use of the word professional there is very ironic and yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. But, this just looked high schoolish, to use one of coach's terms. And that's just what I'm concerned about. So, again, hopefully we look back on this. As I said in the banner moment, the last time this happened, we won 14 out of 15. Hopefully this serves as the same kind of galvanizing force. Andy, do we even need to talk about the numbers? We talked about the turnovers, 20 turnovers. Indiana shoots 14 of 25 from the free throw line, so that continues to be a problem.
I think early on, the turnovers led to, I think at halftime it was 19 Duke points off the 13 turnovers, and they had outscored on points off turnovers. It was 19-0. So you take something that IU had done well and had been something that really bolstered them early in the season, and turned it on its head. The complete opposite. Points off turnovers ended up 24-7 in Duke's favor with the 20 turnovers.
It was 21-0 at one point, right? Was that the
Yeah, I think it was. The assist numbers were bad in the first half. That got better in the second half. 9 assists on 14 makes in the second half. Again,
people in the chat are begging us not to talk about numbers, by the way.
Defense wasn't at the level. I can give you one. Is Ryan also in the chat? He loves to talk about numbers. Great. You had 10 shots blocked.
I've got burner.
Yeah, we should stop talking about this.
We're really walking into the bear's mouth talking about
Yep.
these numbers.
So
Really.
I will say, right, you want proof that numbers lie? IU out rebounded Duke 40-37 and beat them in offensive rebounds 17-12.
It sure didn't feel like it. Although
exactly.
Although there were stretches early in the game when IU missed point blank shots. I mean, they showed a stat at one point that IU in the lane I think was 9 of 23. I can't see that on the box score that I'm looking at, but I mean, that was one thing. The 2-point shooting was not good, period. But around the rim, they really struggled. And part of that, you give credit to Duke for their length, athleticism, all those kinds of things. But just a really, as something the team struggled with last year, struggled early in this game, and then I think that led to some of those cases where they were actively choosing to not take shots at the rim, for fear of getting them rejected and things like that. But no, I don't think we need to probably belabor any of the numbers. I mean, the turnovers was the big one. I mean, that just everything kind of went downhill at that point, and both teams shot free throws poorly, so that was
thank goodness Duke missed a bunch of their free throws.
Yeah.
All right.
There was a minute and 9 seconds apparently where the game was tied, though. So
Ryan is now pasting positive comments from the chat mob in our private chat.
Yep.
This is where this has gone to. All right, we got to get out of this segment.
Oh
All right, coming up on the assembly call.
Tweets again.
I know it's coming. We continue our breakdown of Indiana's 21-point loss to Duke. We'll talk about the rest of the stuff. That's next here on the assembly call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure that you subscribe to our email newsletter so that you get our weekly Six-Banner Sunday news roundups and our postgame analysis emails that are sent the morning after every game. Over 6,000 IU fans are on the list. Join them at assemblycall.com. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 90-69 loss to Duke. So, guys, let's hit some of the other storylines that we haven't talked about. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about individuals tonight, just because the overall team effort was so bad. So, well, I mean, I think there are a few performances that are notable that stand out. To me, the biggest one is Rob Phinisee, who, in guys that I talked to that kind of followed recruiting, everybody had a high opinion of Rob, and I think expected him to be a solid player coming in. But I think the one place where he struggled in high school, and I think why his ranking wasn't so high, is because he really struggled against some of the top competition, like some of the upper tier players in the class. And I think we saw that tonight. Look, he would not be the first freshman to come into a place like this and look a little overwhelmed and struggle. To his credit, I thought he was more composed in the second half. Of course, the caveat being that Duke had really kind of called off the dogs by then. But in the first half, for a guy who we lauded early on in the season, and it's still early in the season, but through the first few games for really never getting sped up and kind of dictating the pace, he really got sped up tonight and was really tentative passing the ball. So I was pleased to see him come back and make some positive plays in the second half, because I think that'll help his confidence. But I think maybe some of those early performances, and our zeal to finally get the answer to the point guard position, maybe we kind of projected him being a little bit more ready for these moments than he is. He's still a freshman. He's going through some learning. So it doesn't change my confidence in him long term, but it does make me a little bit, concerned as we go into some of the tougher road environments in the Big Ten that, ball handling and guard play against really good defensive teams and pressure environments is still an issue for this team. We won't face one like tonight, but, we showed tonight that we are not yet ready to handle that level of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly why I predicted that Devontae Green would be the starting point guard at the beginning of the year. Not because Devontae is light years better than Rob, but because he's a veteran, and Rob played like a freshman in the first half. Tonight, second half, I've seen people in the chat saying like, "Oh, Coach K called off the dogs." You said they called off the dogs. They didn't call off the dogs. They just knew they had the game won and played disinterested.
Coach K was throwing his jacket.
I mean, yeah. So let's not say that like,
oh, he was throwing his jacket, guys. Yo.
But let's not say that like, Duke, was being nice to. I saw somebody in the chat say they were being nice to Archie. Or what are you talking about? They wanted to score 100. They wanted to, but what happened?
But their defensive pressure was clearly a lot less. Of course,
because the players were disinterested. I mean, they were up by what was it? What was the score at the half? It was almost 30.
24 at half. 24.
It was 24 at the half. They knew it was over. They scored 53 points and held Indiana to 29. They knew the game was over. They came out after halftime trying to throw alley-oops and make great, crazy plays and have fun. They weren't executing on a high level. I mean, how many times did they turn the ball over in like the first 5 minutes? I mean, it looked like both teams were just throwing the ball out of bounds. So let's not act like Duke was just, oh yeah, go ahead, have a layup, guys, see if we care. No, they just were disinterested, and that's what happens with young players.
Yeah.
So Rob refocusing in the second half is a positive because it's not like Trey Jones was just like, yeah, do whatever you want, man. I'm just going to wait till I get the ball. I mean, that's not how it was. But I will agree with you. I think that he played like a freshman tonight. And I thought at times Romeo played like a freshman. Romeo was the best player on the floor for Indiana tonight, but I thought he played like a freshman. And I thought that he was forcing a lot of stuff. I thought defensively, he did a pretty nice job when he was on Barrett and Reddish. I mean, as well as you can be expected to do against the two guys who were going to be picked in the top 4 in the NBA draft. Yeah. And I thought that, again, Justin Smith, I thought he got his shoulders slumped after about 10 minutes, but I thought for the first 10 minutes, defensively at least, he was like, he welcomed the challenge of Zion.
He was competing early on.
Yeah, he welcomed the challenge of Zion Williamson, but Zion Williamson the guy's 6'7", 285 and has a 48-inch vertical. There's not, and feet like a dancer. There's nothing you can really do to stop him, especially when you're not 300 pounds. There's just nothing you can do. And he got sort of disheartened by it, which is understandable. Zion Williams will steal your soul.
I thought Phinisee early on, they really attacked him on both ends of the floor. You can, say what you want about officiating, which was by no means a difference in this game, but they basically dared the officials to call hand check fouls and things like that on the ball early in the game. And they didn't do it. And they really got into him and forced him to make some plays that seemed uncharacteristic of him early on in the game. And they really forced him to guard on the other end because there really wasn't, that's what makes Duke really hard to defend in addition to the talent. It's just, who would you really have no choice but to put him on Trey Jones. You might really want somebody else on Trey Jones to begin with, but you can't afford to put him on Barrett or Reddish based on his size. So what do you really do? So I just thought they really made him uncomfortable early and made a point to go at him on both ends, and it rattled him a little bit, but he did rebound going back from there. The Justin Smith point I think is fair. I was really impressed with him early in the game. I do think he embraced the challenge of it, but then a couple of turnovers later, he kind of slumps his shoulders, doesn't run back down the court. And I think he got yanked at that point, and he didn't play a great deal in the second half. I thought it was a little bit more of what we saw in the Arkansas game where he struggled to finish around the basket, and then just kind of things snowballed for him from there. So you liked what you saw in spots, but it was a challenge. So I think a learning moment for Phinisee more than anything. And, that's the challenge with Devontae being hurt. You really couldn't. He got put back in, but, just not really even probably fair to have him to feel like you have to rely on him for significant minutes. And so you just kind of had to roll through it. And I think, Phinisee is a guy we all project as a four-year guy, maybe even a 4-year starter. Will probably look back on this and be able to handle this kind of situation a whole lot better in a few years. That's one of the ones that I don't give him too much of a hard time on that.
Yeah.
Quite honestly.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're relying on a freshman, who was not a 5-star recruit in a pressure situation like this, you're going to get what you get to a certain extent. And, maybe certain people who had higher hopes than others coming into this game should have recognized that. I'll point to myself for that. So the other positive, I mean, I think, as you look at all the performances of all the guys, the one guy I think who stands out that I think we can be encouraged by is Deron Davis, who,
That's where I was going to.
Yeah, and, I thought he had a couple of nice post moves, but what I thought more than anything is he just looked more athletic tonight than he's looked in a few games. He was, just the way that he was moving, he got a few rebounds kind of out of his area. Even the ridiculous technical foul call, like that was still kind of an athletic play to get back there and jump. And he was able to kind of take some hits and some awkward falls and get up and didn't seem to be any worse for the wear. So, look, he's going to be a really important piece for this team. And there wasn't a lot to be encouraged about tonight, but I was encouraged by what we saw from Durham. He played about 15 minutes, which seems about right. Probably can't handle any more than that. But I just thought he looked a little bit lighter on his feet and looked a little bit better. And so that's something encouraging that I'm taking from tonight, Ryan.
Yeah, and if he hits a couple more free throws, it looks even better. And that's again something you're gonna have to work on your legs, or he's still coming back from that. I don't know if he wasn't a phenomenal free throw shooter, but it still looks very stiff when he's shooting free throws, and that's not what it looked like last year. So I think that might be a symptom of just the legs all the way up and down, need to get more acclimated to playing as much as he is. But yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was impressive. And I thought that maybe he was just flashing back to last year against Duke when he got the ball in the post. He's like, I'm attacking. Like there's, I did it last year and they didn't stop me. And that was against Wendell Carter, who was, a lottery pick, and Marcus Bolden, you're not that, and I'm going to go at you. And that looked, he looked great at times. I do still think there's some stiffness running up and down the floor.
Yeah.
But he looked better. And I thought the best he looked was Arkansas, obviously, but of course he looked that way. And then you come back and he's out the next game because of it. So it's still early in his recovery. I know people, once you're out on the court, people want you thrown into it and want you back 100%. He's not 100%, no matter what they tell you. An Achilles injury takes forever to come back from fully. It's even longer than an ACL, which is the one we all hear about, in basketball, and it's longer than that. And so I wouldn't expect him to look like he looked last year this season. I think it's going to take time. And to me, it's amazing that he was out there to start the season.
Yeah.
And because I said all offseason, I mean, I've known people with Achilles injuries that it's taken more than a year to get back out full.
Archie made a good point about it this week, too, that he's basically doing the last part of his rehab in season. He should be doing this off season where he can rest and take some days off and that kind of thing. And you don't have that.
The injury happened
season.
in January. Yeah. So I thought somebody asked in the chat what was wrong with Race Thompson. We hadn't mentioned he has a concussion. Yeah. And so they're going to take their time with that, as they should. But Deron Davis is, he's big for Indiana if he's back. And if he can get to a point where if he can give them 20 minutes a game where he can provide that post offense that only Juwan Morgan can provide so far, that's huge for Indiana. And it gives Juwan a break where he can play out on the perimeter and maybe work outside in instead of having to post up all the time and take the pressure that comes there.
And I think Deron continues to be one of the, kind of early season surprises from my perspective, as a guy that was talked about as a potential, could he take a medical red shirt, things like that. Obviously those questions were answered pretty quickly, but yeah, I really thought he was kind of the only guy that Duke didn't really have much of an answer for inside, which was a little bit, it's similar to what you would have said last year. Now, obviously IU couldn't get him the ball every time. He's not going to play enough minutes to really, do as much as you might want him to, but he really felt like a guy who they struggled to match up with, which is not really something you could say about anybody else. I would say at this point. Yeah. I mean, I thought the technical was kind of, the one angle made it look like he gave him a shove. I think he just came down on him, and, the other, just the size difference between those guys is going to make it probably look worse than it is. But
he just kind of lands awkwardly every time too, like he's not graceful. And so I think that made that look worse than it is.
Yeah. So, I was impressed with him. I think, Fitzner made some shots in the first half. I think he could, this was a game, though, as well as he shot the ball in the first half, played, scored all 12 of his points before the break. This was a game that exposed his weaknesses defensively, kind of lack of physicality, athleticism.
He got man in. Let's just say it, on both ends of the floor. He did.
Whatever you think his deficiencies are, that like this was the game that would expose all of them. And so that was really a challenge for him, but he at least provided some scoring at a point when nobody else could actually make shots. So, so that was, some kind of positive to take. But yeah, I thought, I think Deron, if there is a bright spot to be had from this, it felt like it was him from my perspective.
Great note here in the chat mob. Evan Stoll. Also just realized I have a final exam in Spanish tomorrow worth all my grade, and I'm spending my time talking in the YouTube chat about Indiana basketball losing. Your priorities are in order, Evan. We applaud you.
Losing by 21 in a blowout. Godspeed.
So we all could have gone to bed 3 hours ago.
We applaud your choices. Any other individuals? I mean, I feel like we're kind of letting Juwan Morgan off the hook a little bit. A game like this, you need your stars to come through. He gets 2 fouls early. One of them I think was kind of debatable. He only has, really debatable. He has 8 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, had a nice little stretch in the second half, but, for the most part was a non-factor tonight. And, I think you see some of Juwan's limitations in games where the athletes, or even when they're not quite at Duke's level, like he'll have some trouble in games like this. But I still think it's disappointing for him not to have been able to leave his imprint on the game, especially early when the team really needed a presence to settle him down. He really wasn't able to provide that, and you need that from your senior leader. So, so just not a good night from Juwan, basically, and we shouldn't let him off the hook because he's a senior and a lot's expected of him.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Andy.
I think you look, he and Romeo combined to be 7 of 23 from the floor for 21 points. And I think one of Juwan's fouls, it seems like it's been forever ago since it was there, but there were multiple times that off of made baskets, Duke got runouts that led to either easy baskets for them or IU fouls. And I think one of his fouls was on a play like that, which is, just frustrating at that point. One of the things, you heard people say about Gonzaga was, they really kind of kept Duke's transition game down by being able to score so effectively. Well, IU whenever they would score in the first half, it felt like Duke would immediately be back on the floor at him. And I think that put him in position to get one of those fouls. And it's just, one of those cases where we said this after the Arkansas game, it's magnified in a game like this when the talent differential is so much different. He just has to find a way to keep himself on the floor. And to his credit, he did when he came back in and didn't commit additional fouls, but, still tied for the team lead in assists, was pretty close to it in rebound, did have 4 rebounds. But yeah, I mean, IU is not going to be able to, kind of punch up at a team like Duke with even one of Juwan or Romeo having a bad game, let alone both of them. And I think their games were struggles for different reasons. I think DeFalco really kind of took Juwan out of it, made him a little bit less aggressive on the inside. And Romeo, as Ryan mentioned earlier, I thought really just forced a lot of shots and at times got caught up in trying to, match some of the Duke guys play for play. The 2 step back jumpers that he took were just where those were in the game was just not, it just wasn't a good shot based on what IU was doing, not let alone the result of how those both ended up. And definitely some 4 shots from him. And, you kind of cut him a little bit of slack. He's a freshman in that scenario. And what do you do? But IU is not going to survive certainly a game like this and against any good opponent when those 2 guys play in tandem the way they did over the course of the game.
Do you want to say anything, Ryan, before we break? No? Okay.
No, I'm good.
All right. Coming up in our final segment, we hand out our game ball, take a quick look ahead to Indiana's next opponent, and then in last call, we will deliver our final thoughts on Indiana's 90-69 loss to Duke. That's next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are wrapping up our breakdown of Indiana's loss to Duke. And it is segment 4, so that means we have to hand out a game ball. Sometimes this is obvious. Sometimes it's kind of fun to pick through all the good performances. Then there are nights like tonight.
Like this.
Yes, and then there are nights like tonight. And we would probably skip this, but we are doing a contest in our community where people are predicting who we're going to choose for the game ball. So we do have to have an official game ball winner tonight. So we'll go with Andy first. Your game ball choice.
I don't see why not.
This is the only time Andy's ever hoped that Ryan would interrupt him.
Yeah, well, I might get my wish. Who knows? No, I guess I would go with Durham. I mean, based on what we said before, I do think he was one guy who, played, was, 10 points in 15 minutes, 4 rebounds, didn't turn the ball over, which I mean should be good for something in a game like this. He was the only guy to play more than 2 minutes who didn't have a turnover, I think. So that also accounts for something. He did not contribute to that part of the problem. So I guess I would say him almost by default, just because I'm not sure that anybody else really played well enough to get it. Fitzner really, I would say, is the only other guy you might make an argument for, although I'm willing to listen to arguments for others, but I'll say Durham.
Ryan, do you want to go next?
No, I don't want to, but I will. This might be the toughest one we have all year. I'll go with Al Durham. 27 minutes. I thought he was doing his best against Reddish and Barrett, and he had 9 points. But he was, he never lost his aggressiveness the whole game. I thought he made some he had 2 dumb turnovers, but for the most part, at least he was engaged for the entire 27 minutes he was in there. He was trying to show off a little bit, and he was aggressive, and that's more than I can say for anybody else. And I don't think Al played particularly well, but looking at my options, I'm going with Al Durham.
You really see Al's limitations in a game like this, because I agree. I thought he played hard all night. He can, you always know you're going to get that from Al. And he was able to compile some stats later in the game when the defensive pressure wasn't quite as much. But I thought you saw his limitations as a ball handler, against that pressure early on. Look, okay, so we have a vote for Durham.
We saw that against Arkansas too.
I know, and he's he's playing in a position that he's probably not yet ready for as a sophomore. We just don't have very much guard depth. It's always nice when we have a guy that gets 2 votes, but I got to say, and I don't know if this is going to be a real popular pick, but I'm giving my game ball to Romeo. He was terribly inefficient. Andy, you mentioned some of the bad shots, but I thought early in the game, for the very short period of time when the game was still in doubt, I thought Romeo was the one guy who looked comfortable out there. And if he had had 4 other guys with him that kind of felt like they belonged in that game or acted like they belonged or played with a sense of poise, I think he would have been better. But I thought early on, you mentioned his defense was better. He had a couple of nice block shots. He was at least getting the ball in a position to score. I mean, a bad Romeo shot was still better than 13 turnovers in the first half. And so, I didn't think he got a lot of help, and I thought that hurt, along with, some of his own poor decisions. But to me, he was the guy that brought it the best in the beginning when the game was really lost. And so I kind of give him some extra credit for that, I suppose. So I'm giving my game ball to Romeo, and that means we got to go to the chat mob and see who the chat mob picked. So we've got some votes for Al, we've got some votes for Duran, we have a vote for Jake Forrester's hair, which, I mean, you could make a good argument for that.
I would like to switch my vote, Jerod.
You want to go to Jake Forrester's hair?
I would like to make that my pick for the rest of the season.
I'd pick Demezy because
I saw a lot of Duran in the chat. I would say the chat mob.
I think it's Duran. It's Duran and Al. And all right, we need some more votes. So chat mob, we need votes between Al or Duran. We need votes. This is riveting radio right now.
Yeah,
let's get some votes.
Yeah,
let's get some votes. So
you want to talk Northwestern real quick while the votes are tabulated?
Yeah, let's keep it. Let's keep it quick though, because it's late, and we have AC Radio Thursday night that we can talk more about Northwestern. So yeah, give us a little bit about them.
I mean, for them this year, they really haven't played anyone particularly good. The only top 100 Ken Pom team they've played is Fresno State, that they lost to by 19. So they're 5-1. They play Georgia Tech in the Big Ten ACC Challenge on Wednesday at home, a game that they should win. So could likely go in 6-1, but haven't necessarily beaten anyone impressive to get there. They did beat Utah by 22 on Sunday. Biggest difference for them this year has been defensively. They're 32nd as I look at it now in adjusted defensive efficiency. So that's a pretty big change from what they had last year. Obviously don't have Bryant McIntosh anymore. So trying to figure out what they want to do at point guard, but do have some guys that can score. Ryan Taylor, the Evansville transfer, AJ Turner, I think came from Boston College, and then Vic Law, who's been there, who's now a senior, it looks like. So, I think they will. We said this before coming in when the Big Ten schedule came out. It felt like not a bad early Big Ten game to have, where it wasn't going to be one of the upper echelon teams. And I don't think they've done anything to this point that would suggest that they will end up in the upper echelon in the Big Ten. But a bit of a step up in competition from the other teams that IU's been playing at home in the non-conference outside of Marquette. So, feels like a game IU should win, but Northwestern, defensively has been better than they've been in the past, and given IU's propensity for turnovers, at least in these recent games. The fact that Northwestern ranks 23rd, as I look at it now, in defensive turnover rate is enough to at least scare people a little bit.
Okay, so Durham wins. It was 6-6, and then a couple more votes came in for Durham. So it's Durham, but we also had some votes for another vote for Jake Forrester's hair, Coach K's coat, Bruiser Flint got a vote, Jordan Hull's got a vote, Jeff Oliphant gets a vote, a name from the past. And we also we want to welcome Brian Ney to the chat mob. We said, this is my first time really being active in the chat. You guys are fun. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. You mean,
and if you can be
probably the fun, chat.
Yeah, and if you can be fun after a game like this, that really is saying something.
Yes. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off of your entire order at HoosierProud.com and HomefieldApparel.com. So if you want officially licensed IU gear, go to HomefieldApparel.com. And if you want one of our Assembly Call logo t-shirts or one of Hoosier Proud's unique Indiana-inspired designs, visit HoosierProud.com. On both sites, use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout for 15% off your entire order. That's Assembly at checkout for 15% off your entire order. I want to give a game ball to my throat lozenges, hot tea, and this weird honey lemon spray that I got at Whole Foods for keeping me from coughing all night tonight. I'm going to overdose and pass out and have some kind of crazy illness tomorrow, but I haven't coughed, and that's what matters because we're all about professional audio here on the Assembly Call. All right, let's walk into the mouth of the bear and go with last call.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
What was it again? What was your weird metaphor?
You did say walking into a bear's mouth. That's
there you go. That's different than what he said. Thank you.
The mouth, said the same thing, just with the words rearranged. But either way, all right. Well, I think we should let Ryan go first then, Jerod. So he can.
Yeah, someone asked, is the honey lemon spray a PED? It's probably. I think it's what Ray Lewis was using the last time the Ravens won a championship.
It's fine.
It's fine. The show's going off the rails. Let's get out of here.
Yes.
Last call.
All right, who's first?
Ryan's first.
Okay,
right,
very good.
No, Andy's first. He's in the Eastern time zone.
All right, fine.
Oh, yes. As it approaches 1 a.m. in the Eastern time zone, and I question every life choice I've ever made by sitting here and talking about this stupid game.
Not all of them. Just the life choice to start the show. That's the only one that you need to question.
Well, it brings others into focus, but that's neither here nor there. I like I said, to me, the disappointment was not in the loss itself. It was in the way that this team played. And it seems like they're starting to get healthy. It was good to see Zach and Devontae back out there. Durham looked good as we talked about. And so, hopefully this is the beginning of starting to figure out what this team is really going to look like, because I don't know that we've gotten a clear picture of it in any game this season. And I'm not sure that tonight gave us a clear picture of it either. And so while some of the positive games like Marquette and some of the early season blowouts kind of gave you, hey, this is the, maybe top end, it gives you the good vision of what this team could become when at full strength. Games like tonight give you pause and make you wonder, are there deeper issues that, maybe we haven't seen because we haven't seen this team at full strength. And the honest answer is we don't have any idea at this point. The good news, I think, though, for as difficult as these next 4 games may be, Northwestern going to Penn State, who beat Virginia Tech at home tonight, playing Louisville, who beat Michigan State tonight, and playing Butler, will kind of accelerate that learning process for us to figure out what this team could really become, what the rotation looks like, and whether they're really going to be able to work through some of the issues that they saw tonight. Because given what we've seen from the Big Ten, if tonight's issues are something they are not able to solve, whether at full strength or not, it's going to turn into a long season pretty quickly. And so I do have confidence they're going to figure some of those things out, and things won't be as bad as they look tonight. But again, I have a hard time kind of walking completely away from the way they looked in the parts of this game that mattered. And so, good thing is have a chance to see if they turn that around. But I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think it's fair to have your guard up at this point about the potential issues with the team going forward. And we'll hope that it was just a blip, as a famous man once said.
Yes, he did.
He did say that.
He did. How does he treat student media?
Pass.
How does Coach K treat student media?
All right, Ryan, last call.
I didn't even know that was a drop, honestly.
A walking skeleton with a hairpiece.
Okay, now that I did know. Look, I know we all want to get angry about this. Of course, I'm upset about the way they played and all that stuff, but I did kind of warn you coming in. This was coming.
Yeah, everybody takes solace in Ryan being right. That'll make this feel better.
Happens a lot. But Saturday is what matters, and that's the start of Big Ten play, and we'll see how they come out against Northwestern. It's one of my least favorite things in college basketball. What is it, a 1:00 start on a Saturday? So guys are going to come out flat. At least they're at home. But let's see how Indiana responds to this, because it's not about losing to Duke. That the game tonight did not matter. It's a showcase. It does not matter unless you beat Duke. There's almost no purpose for it. It's gone from the schedule, essentially. It's about the Big Ten now and about refocusing and winning on Saturday. So let's see how they come out. Let's see what they do. And that's really all that matters right now, is moving forward and getting better one game at a time, because they really got to get better quick.
Yeah, they do. And look, the biggest issue all season, the turnovers are a big issue, the poor free throw shooting, all those things. But the biggest issue is the injuries and not having the team and having a team that clearly doesn't have chemistry yet and that just doesn't seem very sure of itself. And the thing that's going to correct that is getting guys healthy and getting guys back playing regular minutes. And of all the, there weren't many positives tonight, but again, seeing Durham look healthier, just getting Devontae and Zach back in the lineup. This team is starting to get healthier. You certainly hope that, a loss like this and the stretch that they've had doesn't, damage the confidence or do anything long-term to this team. But I don't think we need to be worried about that yet. This is a team that does have some strong internal leadership. It's a team that does have talent. And as we mentioned off the top of the show, the last time this happened, it turned into a galvanizing event for the team, and they rebounded from it. And so obviously totally different cast, totally different coach. So we'll have to see what this team does from it. But, as much as I hate to say it, Ryan, I think you are right. You just have to put this in the rear view. It matters in the sense that it really highlighted some major issues and they need to get fixed. But it's a loss that doesn't need to linger, because it's not going to follow us around in the record, in Big Ten play. It's not going to be a drag on the NCAA tournament resume. So the team, the coach, they've just got to figure out a way to be better from it, because they were not good tonight. And I think it's totally fair to be disappointed as an IU fan and to be frustrated and to really be upset at what we saw, because it was a lack of focus, a lack of organization, like Archie said. But all that matters now is how they come back from it, and hopefully they use it and become better, and we look back on this as a game that ended up pushing this team in the right direction. It's a little bit hard to see right now because it was such a bad performance, but that's what we have to hold on to as we move forward. All right, that'll do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Thursday night. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and be careful walking into bears' mouths. Go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
And that's a wrap.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
All right. I'm done.
Kent wants to give you the game ball, by the way.
Oh, I am pretty wonderful.
Oh, man.
Hey, man,
geez.
when I told you exactly how this would
So glad
go,
you're back, Ryan.
No, you did. I know.
I
I always talk myself into the team playing
know.
better than they're
I
going
know.
to, and then I get let
But-
down.
Man, after seeing them lose to Gonzaga, I knew they were just going to blow our friggin' doors off. Somebody, I won't say who, but somebody asked me if they should take Duke plus 15, and I said, yeah, take it.
You mean Duke minus 15?
Whatever. Duke and 15, give me 15. Yeah, whatever. I'm not a gambler. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I just said, yeah, absolutely take that and run with it, because they're going to blow IU's doors off. I don't know, just felt it coming.
Yeah.
team.
There it is.
I hate Duke as much as anybody, but that's a really, really good team, and those are some really, really good players. And
Yeah, they are.
that's assuming Nasir Little goes number 2 and Barrett goes number 1. You'll probably have Reddish go number 3, and you'll probably have Zion go number 4 or 5.
Is it weird that Reddish did a couple things tonight, and I kind of caught myself thinking he has the most NBA potential of all of them? He just, man, he's got
that's the thing.
So much talent wrapped up in him.
He reminds me a lot of Andrew Wiggins, though, where he just drifts through games sometimes.
Yeah, that's what'll hold him back.
But as far as
that was kind of the book on him coming out, wasn't it? I feel like I heard people say that about him. Generally, didn't like him because she thought his jersey was way too tight.
Well,
she was like, "Why is that guy's jersey?" Well, he was wearing a medium, I think. But be that as it may,
Barrett is clearly trying to be James Harden, and he's not there yet. But just the pure talent and the ability to finish, he's going to be really good. But yeah, if the draft happened today, 3 of those guys would be in the top 4. Trey Jones is probably a first-round pick. Bolden, if he continues to play like he's been playing, can probably be a second unit rim protector, like a late first-round pick. They're just loaded. They're freaking loaded. I mean, Bolden was a top recruit when he, 2 years ago. So there's nothing you can do against them. A team like Virginia that plays weird might be able to do something against them. A team with veteran guards like Gonzaga and length like Gonzaga has. I'm shocked Gonzaga beat him without Tilly.
Yeah.
But they almost gave that game away. So
yeah, they didn't.
But I mean, Auburn played them tight too, but Duke just didn't play with. Duke didn't shoot the ball well in that game. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how you beat them. I really don't. I don't know how you beat them consistently unless you do something weird like Syracuse playing a zone or Virginia playing that super slow down mover blocker offense that drives people insane. I don't know how you beat them just in a regular straight up game.
I'd like to see a Duke player sometime in my lifetime have a real post move.
Zion counts. Sorry, coach, but Zion counts. He's pretty good. But he learned that in high school. He didn't learn it from Coach K.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's late. We got to get this thing posted.
Do it.
We will. Thanks, everybody, for being here so late. It's awesome to see so many of you here live, especially after a dispiriting game like that. But as Alex said, this is like therapy, and it certainly is on nights like tonight. Certainly is. All right, Andy, you're hosting Saturday because I'm going to be out of town. You're good for that?
Yeah, that's fine.
And Ryan, you'll be here, right?
Yeah, I think so.
We can just preload your rant about the early game.
I'll
just go find an old one and you can just sit that out for like 3 minutes.
Just do voiceover on the team name and the.
Why would they do that? Why do they do that? Like we always go to Penn State and play an early game.
Yeah.
Why?
TV. Why is anything else done? Television.
You want nobody to watch and you want nobody to be there because that's what you're going to get at Penn State in the afternoon, morning. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, the Penn State game's on Tuesday, so.
Well, this year, yeah. Usually we play them on a Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Noon.
All right.
Nobody wants to watch that. All
right, gents.
Later, guys.
All right.
See y'all.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Later.